Okay. Welcome to another episode of JEHC, the Jason Elvis Herdcast, the most original name cast ever. The original name I wanted for this was taken, but whatever. These things happen. So I landed with just my name, Jason Elvis Herd, and then I added cast to it. But today we're going to be talking about TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. And men my age, our experiences, things like that. I have been on it. Well, hormone replacement therapy, same thing. It's very misunderstood. I have spent the better part of several years getting dialed in with this. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of doctors that unfortunately don't know what they're doing with this stuff. And as a patient, and as someone who has gone through the gauntlet, so to speak, with this, and have come out on the other end doing really fucking good. And so I have helped a handful of my friends navigate through this field. I am not a doctor, and by default, I'm far too honest to be a doctor. And what I mean by that is the unfortunate reality of Western medicine here in the States is that more often than not, the doctors are more or less pharmacologists that are doing the bidding of the pharmaceuticals relative to whether or not they're actually helping you. And that doesn't mean all of them are dipshits. It just means that the unfortunate reality when it comes to certain things like TRT, it's just misunderstood in a fashion that ends up being a very dipshit-like experience for the patients, unfortunately, and typically leaves them with no answers. So like I've said, I am now several years into this journey, and I have fucking dialed it in, and it's amazing. It is one of the best things I've ever done. I don't know why I hesitated to do it. Starting in 2016 and change, my testosterone levels were in the low 200s, and I didn't really do shit about it. I felt fine. My dick still worked just fine, and I didn't feel terrible at all. I mean, normal stuff. I did use a lot of caffeine for workouts, training. I still competed a lot in Ironman competitions and things like that. So then 2017 and 18 range into 19, I just struggled, and no doctor really mentioned much to me or did much. And I just hovered in that low 200 range on testosterone for years. And it was just not working for me. And it didn't seem like stuff I was doing mitigation-wise to help, cleaning up my diet, cutting out or significantly reducing alcohol intake, bad food, eating healthier, exercising, lifting, things like that. Unfortunately, it just seemed like a lot of the mitigation tactics I tried to deploy over the course of several years weren't really getting me any great results. And maybe my testosterone was shooting up here or there, but I never got above fucking like 300, and if you understand the reference ranges for the majority of stuff like that, on those scales, the reference ranges are going up to 1100. So after like under 250, you're pretty much fucked. And so I was in that fucked range for years until I started on TRT, and then I had trouble with that start and things like that. And so through this process, fortunately speaking, by being a complete psychopath with wanting to feel better and get stuff dialed in, I have learned a great deal. And so I put together a little outline, as I do with a lot of my little podcasts, on the stuff I want to talk about in relationship to TRT and things like that. So this is testosterone replacement therapy. This means you are exogenously injecting yourself or adding testosterone to your system, so to speak, that is above or equivalent to a natural production. In my case, my natural production just went to shit in my early 30s. I am now 37. And so before I went into injecting and onto TRT, I struggled for years with this. And, there's guys, I have friends that were not in that position, so to speak, that end up going on TRT and things like that. But it could revolve around some primary aspects of, your libido's fucked up, your dick's not working, you're tired all the time, you have other gastrointestinal issues and things like that. And believe it or not, yes, they do have tie-ins to testosterone. Everything a man deals with has a tie-in to testosterone in one way, shape, or form. And if you are not appropriately producing enough, or your body's not telling your balls appropriately to produce enough, i.e. primary, secondary, you're going to have a bad time, and it's going to lead to a lot of stuff that is very unpleasant for men our age and men that are older. Now, this is not, and the way I looked at it is, not in a fashion of trying to get back into like a bodybuilding-esque mentality or stuff like that. When I was younger, I definitely was into lifting a lot more. I spent quite a few years training relatively hard, and then spent years competing in things like Ironman competitions and things like that. So by no means was I ever into like an IFBB status or anything along those lines. I also never experimented with anabolics or PEDs, other than like creatine and pre-workout. That was about it. A lot of that stuff just scared me, and frankly, I was never like trying to compete in bodybuilding, so I never got to that level. And which is ironic because now I'm on testosterone, so there's some argument, and that is no longer a natty status to some degree. And I can explain why that would technically not be natty, other than the fact that you're injecting. But so with that, let's review proper low numbers, so to speak. Like I'm saying, you've got guys that'll go to these clinics and they're like in 400 or 500 range, and they're being told that like, oh, you have low T, you need to be put on the sauce. And I just don't know if that is a good thing, because I have friends that have gone down that road and they end up just feeling like dog shit, for other reasons too, other than just getting on the sauce real quick. My specific situation is I spent years fledgling in the low 200s with diet mitigation, circadian rhythm mitigation, sleep mitigation, trying to feel better without basically going to a testosterone replacement. And I spent years doing that until I finally crossed the bridge. And then the first doctor that I crossed the bridge on and did that, because at that point I was down to like 130. It was pretty gnarly. And I was feeling really not good. Primarily the main thing is like, it just destroys, like testosterone for men, the best way to describe it is like, it makes effort feel good overall. And when you're not dialed in, everything just feels worse, from the anxiety to the depression to the sleep issues to, you name it. It just does not coincide to a positive outcome every day for men. And so what I'm getting at is, with these numbers, so to speak, if you're like mid-range, 400 or 500 range, 600 range, and your doctor is telling you to jump on the sauce without like appropriately telling you to go through diet mitigation, to go through sleep mitigation, to cut out a lot of the other bullshit, cut out the alcohol, cut out the weed, cut out excessive amounts of caffeine, fix stress levels. These things got to be tackled first before you just start injecting or jumping onto the sauce, so to speak, as like my sort of end-all be-all gonna fix all the bullshit, when the reality is, once you start hitting 30 plus, like, you can't fucking drink like you used to. You can't fucking smoke weed like you used to, or edibles or whatever you want to call it, because THC does have a negative effect on testosterone production and the signaling, so to speak, for your body to produce said testosterone, as well as other aspects too. So again, not the best thing to be, using THC on a daily basis if you are trying to correct naturally testosterone levels and things like that. But again, my point being is, if you're going to a doctor and you feel like you have low testosterone and you're going to have this conversation, open this up, and your doctor instantly throws you on the sauce, so to speak, like without going through at least a year of like these other mitigation tactics with your sleep, your stress, your diet, etc., like that's not a good scenario. You definitely want to run away from that, and you want to focus on mitigation of the other bits first and foremost. And I'm going to get into the blood work stuff first, but the other thing too is like, you need to go to a doctor, or hopefully your doctor first and foremost starts talking to you about primary and secondary reasons why this might be happening. There are solutions in those avenues. And like in my case, it seems to be like a little bit of a fledgling pituitary fuckery to some degree. So even I went to the extent of getting the pituitary MRIs and everything like that. So even though my balls and stuff work fine, it's just the signaling wasn't quite amazing, so that I just simply wasn't working out great in that fashion. And it could be from head injuries in the past and things like that, and I'm still trying to investigate that. I have at least a dozen concussions from sports and stuff like that from when I was younger. And so once I hit, low 30s, 31, 32 years old, I started to get, sort of this downhill effect of that testosterone production until, like I'm saying, until like 2017, 18, 19, it went, 200, low 200s, fledgling down to the high 100s to like the 130 range until I finally jumped on testosterone replacement after trying to do a bunch of other stuff, clean up my diet, quit alcohol, quit everything, sleep mitigation, And so with that, you have to focus on these factors of lifestyle first and foremost before you just start taking stuff. And then, the doctors and stuff, there's going to be a lot of good sources, and there's going to be a lot of these sort of like clinics that just want to fucking run you through their sort of mill and put you on generic dosing and generic protocols that are like the worst fucking thing you can do in this scenario, because every single man is different. Every single situation is different. And like I said, like, I'm not a doctor. I have had to learn this through hard knocks. So you don't take what I'm saying as like, this is going to work for you. I'm just simply explaining what works for me and the stuff I've had to go through and learn to get to where I want to be, to where it is dialed in. And like, I feel fucking great every day. It's like a light switch too. Cause once you figure it out, it's fucking night and day difference in everything. From the depression, anxiety, the sleep, the muscle building, the sex life with the wife and all that stuff. It's a factor that is so important to everyday men that it's not everyone can take the same Tylenol dose, so to speak. Every man is different, and I'll go through all these variations. So these protocols and these clinics that they just throw you on is really scary and really just fucks with dudes. And that's like the friends that I've helped, etc. That is the number one problem, is they're getting thrown on these generic protocols, and a handful of them just ended up feeling like complete dog shit until they started walking down the same path I was to mitigate all of the negative effects and start dialing everything in. And so let's go through, like, I do have an endocrinologist I use. Fortunately, he does abide by like a lot of stuff I want to do, because again, not everything is done through my insurance side how I want it done. And so I mitigate that with my own sort of stuff on the side. And I'll show you, let's go through a few sources. So when I was starting out this journey, I kind of went on this and was like, well, fuck it. And here's the other thing too, you have to understand that once you start this path of testosterone replacement, like, you're on this shit. You cannot cycle this. You don't just simply come off of it. And you don't just simply do a trial run of it. You're on, because your body's going to start shutting down its natural production in this sort of feedback loop once you start injecting endogenously, or the creams, or whatever you want to call it. So this is a decision, like I'm saying, it took me years to make this decision, to cross that bridge and trying all this stuff, because once you're on, you're on. I'm not going to magically just stop taking testosterone in 10 years. I'm fucking injecting for life. So you have to keep that in mind, that this is now something that's a part of your routine and a part of your everyday life. This is not I just hop on for a little bit and hop off. It doesn't work like that. Even in the bodybuilding-esque realms and things like that, there is no hop on and hop off. It causes a lot of problems. Now, you'll see there are guys that talk about cycling on and off, and what they're referring to or not disclosing for the most part is blasting cruising. And so what they're doing is they're taking 500, 600, 700 milligrams of test a week, maybe more depending on the case, under their blast. And then on the cruise side, they just dial it back to what would be like a TRT dose, 100, 200, something like that. And I'll get into some more dosing bullshit later. But the point being is, even in these situations, like, they're still cruising at a level, because once you're on, you're on. You can't just start, stop. Your body doesn't work like that. You're gonna have a really fucking bad time if you do this start and stop game. It's really gonna fuck with you. And I'll get more into that. But so during my journey, one of the first things I picked up was Nelson Virgil's book. It is, I know it's hard to say, but it's Testosterone, A Man's Guide. I bet you I can find it on Amazon. So I'll just go through a few like good sources, and this is like where I get a lot of this information I'm going to review and have learned a lot on my own too. And so this book right here, I got this and read this book. This dude has a lot of great information in this. So that's one good source. Another good source is Thomas O'Connor, America on Steroids. And so he's another TRTS doc. The spelling is terrible, but there we go. Anyways, so again, here's another good one, American Steroids. Now he is the anabolic doc on YouTube. He's got a ton of other great videos, etc. And so he is a great source, and his specialty is not so much just hormone replacement or TRT, but in mitigation of issues of individuals who have abused PEDs in the past and they're now on TRT and hormone replacement therapy. So not necessarily my position. I never used PEDs when I was younger, but I've had friends that definitely cycled quite a fucking bit, whether it's from Winnie's to VAR to D-ball to Trem to all the other stuff. But in those situations, if you're doing damage over the course of a decade plus, by the time you're my age, 37, 40, and 50, so to speak, older than me, and I'm, again, not necessarily in that side of the fence, but he is a good source for the guys that are trying to mitigate damage post, using a lot of PEDs and things like that. So he has a lot of knowledge in monitoring and prescribing and helping guys on this TRT path. So that's two great sources. Another great source is Derek and his thing is Merrick Health. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Yeah, and so Derek, more plates, more dates. Great YouTube channel as well. He does a ton of videos on TRT, and so he is a co-founder of Merrick Health, which I really like this a lot, and I can dive into the reasons why. But again, this is a great place to start as well as the anabolic doc. He has his own thing too, and I can bring that up as well. Testosterone. There we go. And so this is the anabolic doc. That's the book I just showed you. And so these guys are, at least that I have found, really good. And now you might think like, oh, well, no, that's just who I use. That's why I'm promoting. Fuck no. I started out with one doctor who put me on a protocol that was fucked, that just made me feel like complete dog shit. Almost instantly. It was bad. And then went through endocrinologists and things like that. So it's not as simple. I've been through probably a dozen different doctors over the course of several years to get this dialed in and to figure it out. Mostly on my own, unfortunately. And so with that said, you've got another guy is Greg Doucette on YouTube. He's IFBB Pro. He does talk a lot about other bullshit on YouTube, but he's got some good videos on TRT. And how to do that stuff greatly. And so these are like some really phenomenal sources. And the cool thing with this is, let's see. So that's getting started when you start. Okay. So like I'm saying, I started off with like a naturopath-esque type of doctor who prescribed me a dosage that was way the fuck off. Very fucking low, unfortunately, and a protocol that was fucked up and dosage frequency and things like that. So if I was starting from scratch, I would start with Merrick Health, or if I was a previous PED user and abuser, I would probably start off with Anabolic Doc. He has a lot more experience with PED abusers and getting them dialed in on TRT. If I'm not a PED abuser, I definitely would start with Merrick Health. And the reason I really like Merrick Health is their format is a little different. So their format is geared towards the consultation and not the cookie cutter throwing you on fucking pharmaceuticals and getting you out the door. So they make their money more on the consultation side, which I really do like, because it puts this emphasis on focusing on what you need, not can I fucking get you injecting shit right away. And a lot of times they do not prescribe guys TRT that come to them for quote unquote TRT because, like I said, you'll find that there are lifestyle mitigation tactics you can deploy that'll drastically fucking change what you're doing. And just to be clear, like I am not referring to like those bullshit supplements like test boosters and crap like that are fucking wannabe AI bullshit that they just shove in your face on Amazon or all these other people that just market this shit, like test boosters and things like that. And you got to be very careful with that stuff because typically that stuff is not going to do you any good because all it's really doing is acting as some sort of like, shitty AI, so to speak. Although Andrew Huberman has some really good work on like Tonga Ali and a few others that he has done that have shown to actually help in a non sort of like this bullshit test booster thing. So he's another good guy. His name is Andrew Huberman. I'll probably put the links on this video below. He's got a YouTube series as well, and I really do like his other information other than the TRT stuff is Andrew Huberman, and he's done stuff with Derek too and worked with Derek on this other sort of supplement stuff too, and Derek is the lead, one of the guys at Merrick Health. And so the reason I would start with Merrick Health is because this is perfect for the dudes that are just getting started, and you can run your blood work and your lab work and things like that to get going. Now, I'll dive more into that in a minute, but let me focus on some bad sources. Now, there's this. Watch, let me try and find them real quick. I'd say this is a medium source. TRT. Hormone optimization. There's these guys too, right here, and I would say they're medium. And the reason I say they're medium, so to speak, is because they do have some fundamental flaws in their sort of bullshit. They are not big fans of AI, which I totally fucking support. Aromatase inhibitors, not a big fan. I definitely am not on those. And I'll get into the reasons why. But these guys, they do have a bunch of good information. And they have like the forums and stuff on Facebook and things like that you can join. I got kicked off of there because they seem to do this bullshit where they promote you have to let your estrogen just go completely wild and out of control. You do not want to reel it in whatsoever, which is very fucking bad. And while simultaneously telling guys that what they need to do is if they feel shitty, it has nothing to do with estrogen. That there's no such thing as estrogen side effects to TRT replacement therapy, and that if you have these side effects, in no way, shape, or form are they correlated to the spiking of estrogen because of aromatization, that they are actually other things, and that if you do have these side effects or you're not feeling perfect on TRT, what you have to do is change your dosages and frequencies. Now, when you change your dosage frequencies, and I'll dive into this in more detail, that's the number one mitigation for aromatization of estrogen. So they are very hypocritical on this side of the table by claiming that you have to let estrogen just go wild and there's no such thing as estrogen side effects, while simultaneously telling every single one that feels shitty on TRT that you have to do the number one thing for estrogen mitigation, which is dosage frequency and amount. So again, like I'm saying, a medium source, so to speak, that I have found. Another good one that is a horrible source is, let me see if I can find it real quick. Dave Asprey, this fucking guy. Oh my God. Let me just find this. So without going into like the detail on how fucking wrong this guy is with everything from fasting to fucking male pattern baldness. And so the Dave Asprey stuff is just, it's funny because like once you dive into the TRT bullshit and start listening to the people who do know what they're talking about, this sort of fruitcake beta male guy that looks like he's in their 60s when he's only like 43 or some shit, is really just so wrong. And he's just giving bad advice to dudes, and it's not cool. And you can just tell right away in his little intro bullshit about how he talks about he just cycled TRT for a few years and then he came off TRT because of his bulletproof diet, which is an inverse fucking fasting ketogenic diet, which anyone with TRT knows that has done fucking exogenous testosterone and blood work. Well, that's kind of ass backwards because you spike your SHBG in low carb and that intermittent fasting, which means it deteriorates your free T. So right off the bat, you fuck yourselves, whether you're on TRT or not. So by claiming that this diet that's the inverse of actual testosterone, like positive side of the table, fixed his quote unquote TRT to where he could come off of his TRT. Again, just blatantly fucking lying or just totally full of shit, to a degree that's impressive, or he's just an idiot. And the best part too is, he goes into like the injectable part, and gel cream, testosterone pellets. And he talks about not liking that stuff, which I get that. But where is this injectable? Plenty of cholesterol. Subclinical. So here is, be sure you cycle testosterone too. Again, what the fuck? You do not cycle TRT. Even bodybuilders, what they're doing is blasting and cruising. They're not cycling it. This is such bad advice. It's dangerous and it's impressively ignorant to be telling people this shit. Like, I gave you multiple sources that debunk all of this horse shit that Dave Asprey fucking spouts, especially on the ketogenic crap with the fixing, testosterone. Ketogenic diets die fucking testosterone. But more importantly, on the cycling aspect, and doctors, like, I had a doctor that tried to put me on this shit too, where, like, they're telling you have to come off of your TRT regimen every, like, 6 months or a year, and you have to come off for, like, 8 weeks so that they can do a blood draw to get a baseline, and it's, like, totally fucked. Because you spend 6 months or a year and change just getting your dosage dialed in to where your TRT protocol is good, and then you come off of it just to crash into the fucking ground and feel like dog shit. Like, cycling TRT, bro. Stay in your lane, Dave. Bro, it's so fucking wrong. And again, like I said, like, once you're on, you're on. Your whole concept then is not do I or do I not take TRT. It's mitigation of risk while dialing in a protocol that makes you feel as best as you can. It's not cycling TRT. And he goes on to say that, he cycled it because his balls shrank and he went on to HCG. Like, again, this is, like, so obviously bullshit. Anyone that has any experience in the TRT realm, like, sure, you can run the HCG if you're trying to still be fertile and maintain this, but if you're legitimately taking TRT for several years and then you just claim that you just went on to some HCG regimen and then now you can come off TRT with your ketogenic diet and your balls are back to full size, I'm calling bullshit. Either you never should have been on TRT at the beginning. It wouldn't matter. It would have shut you down in the meantime. But again, this just goes to show you that, like, you got to be careful who you're fucking listening to, because these guys are out here, man, and they are just fucking clueless. Unreal. Like I said, this is a commitment for life. You're fucking on for life. You need to focus on dialing it in for life. It's a part of you. It's a part of your everyday thing now. So just accept it and move on. And if you're not ready for that, do not jump on TRT unless you legitimately need it. So if you're still hovering in that 400 or 500 range, 600 range, do the other bullshit first, the lifestyle mitigation stuff. Don't just indiscriminately start, plugging away on TRT thinking I need to be at 1,000, otherwise I'm a piece of shit. So, I mean, there's a good chance you could turn that around into 1,000 easily with some mitigation tactics. Easily. I was not the case on that. Now, so we went through some of the, stuff that I've learned as far as who to talk to and where to get some good information. Let's go through, like, the TRT fear porn, so to speak. First and foremost, you are much worse off with low testosterone than high testosterone. And I don't need to go through specifics. You can easily start Googling the medical literature on what low testosterone does to men. Everything from cardiac issues to fucking prostate issues to just the generic bullshit. I mean, depression, anxiety, libido, insomnia, all this stuff that, although you're not, dying every day, it just creates such an unpleasant situation that you reach to other externalities to mitigate these sort of stressors or feelings, so to speak, and that's never a good idea, whether it's fucking SSRIs, whether it's sleeping medication, whether it's alcohol consumption, weed, sex addiction, other crap. It's just, you got to understand that this low number, so to speak, creates a situation much worse than the high side, because they do have like testosterone fear porn as well, and you could easily Google and find that. And to be fair, I fell victim to that for a few years too, scared that like, oh, it's gonna fuck my heart up. Oh, it's gonna fuck up other stuff, and I don't want to, die like these fucking bodybuilders and shit. And looking back now, it's fucking hilarious because, my friends and stuff, they're fucking cycling fucking grams of shit a week. And here I am on roughly 120 milligrams a week of test, worried, thinking, you know, before I jumped on per se, thinking like, oh, fuck, dude, like I'm going to have all these other problems because of the TRT fear porn. And so like, it does not promote or cause prostate cancer. You know, that was one of the first things I was scared of, so much so that I actually did get the exams and everything prior to starting this, etc. It does not shrink your dick, contrary to popular belief. It does the inverse of that to some degree, in a fashion that your balls will start to hypertrophy, because they're going to be called upon to produce less, if any, natural testosterone. So they, just like every muscle, so to speak, aren't going to have to work as hard. So your balls are going to shrink, which, you know, by, you know, the illusion or the way things would appear, as the balls shrink, your dick looks bigger. So the dick shrinking thing with TRT is funny, but that's just not how it works. And again, more of the fear porn. The RBC, the thick blood stuff. Okay, so yeah, I really struggle to find any studies in men on TRT with the increase in viscosity causing issues. Maybe, I spent, years going through and reading medical literature. I know it's really nerdy to do, but once you start Googling and going down the rabbit hole, there's a ton of medical literature you can start to read. And again, I couldn't find substantial stuff to kind of back up this thought that going on TRT is going to thicken your blood and cause this sort of scary viscosity. Now, it can cause, you know, RBC, hematocrit, things like this to maybe increase and rise, but there's mitigation tactics and things that can easily be deployed to where this is not an issue. Like, there's men on TRT for fucking decades, and none of this is ever an issue. Inflammation from injections and stuff, or the gel. So, like, again, easily to mitigate the inflammation. So the fear porn on, you got to inject yourself. Once you get past that, and again, I was not a big fan of that. I had never had to inject myself with anything before that. In fact, when I started TRT, my wife was doing my injections for me because she was already accustomed to doing injections from when she had to do a daily blood thinner bullshit at some time. And so she kind of walked me through it like it's no big deal. I fucking got this. And really helped me out getting started, because I'm just not a fan of the fucking needles, you know, to get started with, so to speak. And then the fear about the gels and stuff. Well, yeah, I get that, because the gels and those things can rub off on other people. Like, you don't want your fucking wife getting rubbed up against a bunch of testosterone. That'll fuck her up. You do not want your kids getting rubbed up against a bunch of testosterone. That'll fuck them up. I mean, it's powerful shit. So again, there's some fear porn with that. Again, easy to mitigate. Lipid panel, LD. If you go on TRT, your fucking lipid panel is going to be fucked, and you increase, you know, the heart attack and blah, blah. No, again, I struggle to find those issues outside of the normal stuff, i.e. dudes are treating their bodies like shit and not paying attention to their blood work and not paying attention to externalities other than TRT that put them in a bad situation regardless of being on TRT. And then all of a sudden pointed to the finger like, oh, I'm on TRT, so like that's what fucked up, you know, put me in a worse situation. Again, I'm going to go through that in a minute. But, you know, this fear porn bullshit about TRT being dangerous and scary is just that. It's just bullshit. Now, to start out, first and foremost, before you jump on anything, before your doctor fucking gives you anything to do, you need to do a full fucking blood work panel. And this is where I feel like Anabolic Doc fucking hit this one on the head. He does a good job, Thomas. So let's see, shop. I'm trying to remember where it is on here. Let me see if I can find it. I understand. Thank you, sir. So I did a consultation with him too when I got started. It was so worth the money, where we do a full blood panel that he designs, and then we talk about it. And yeah, here we go. So blood draw, and it's just at a local place. And then we do a phone call consultation to review all of this. I'm trying to find, he has a listed somewhere. Blood draw, schedule consultation, media, shop, team, contact, what we treat. I'm trying to think where that was. Let's see, it might be on this page. Here we go. So he does a great job of this starting panel right here, and that is your CBC, your comprehensive metabolic panel. Hemoglobin A1C, a full lipid panel, PSA total. Again, that's your prostate stuff. That's very important. Even at my age, you know, I was in my mid-30s at the time when I was tackling this. TH8 with reflex and free T4. So that's some thyroid stuff. And I definitely would add to this free T3 and reverse T3 as well. Vitamin D and the other bits, urinalysis with reflex. Testosterone-free dialysis in total. Prolactin, FSH, and LH. Again, very important to help determine secondary primary. Estrogen total serum and SHBG. Again, this is what you want to start with. If your doctor is talking about putting you on testosterone without at a minimum running this panel, again, you need to tell them like, no, bro, let's fucking do this first. Let's review where we're at, because there's mitigation tactics that could pop up easily in this that could be significantly hindering your testosterone that you may not understand or know about, that you don't even fucking need TRT. So again, this is a phenomenal thing that he has done. And like I said, I did go through this with him. He was not the first doctor I consulted. This was like a year into my journey, so to speak. So I ended up starting fresh with him again. So I was already on TRT, and I still did the panel and stuff like that. But to assess where you're at and to start with, you got to do this. And why all the doctors don't go through that panel is crazy. And then, like I said, Merrick Health has their own version of this too. Basic, comprehensive, complete. I mean, the complete is fucking rad. And again, if you have the money, do the complete and the consultation. When I did it with Dr. O'Connor, it was under $1,000 for the whole deal between all the blood work and the initial consultation, which is like a solid hour and change of an in-depth discussion on how fucked you are or how not fucked you are. And then this one too, I think is like $1,000 between the blood work and the initial consultation too. So you're going to have some investment into this, but this is something you got to do. And it's a part of it. So again, starting off with the blood work is very important. Like I'm saying, the PSA 3.4 or below is one thing I looked at. The thyroid panel, like I was saying, the free T3, free T4, reverse T3, I like to look at. The estradiol, again, very important. But again, these are two phenomenal sources. Like I said, if you are not accustomed to PED use or abuse in the past, the Merrick Health one is phenomenal for like the everyday fitness dude. If you are a little bit more accustomed to PED abuse in the past, Anabolic Doc is a little bit more of an expert in helping mitigate some of that damage that may have occurred from past PED abuse. With that said, he can still totally handle the other stuff too. So like these are two guys I have dealt with that I really, really liked out of the dozen doctors or so that I have dealt with. Now, when you get started on TRT, you got to keep in mind a few bits about like natural stuff per se. And so like naturally you're producing 40 to 50 milligrams a week, maybe 70 milligrams a week in your natural production phase. And that does not necessarily correlate to exogenous testosterone because it doesn't quite work the same. So if you're naturally producing 50 a week and that puts you at the 700 range, you may have to inject 150 a week to still put you at a 700 range. I know that sounds weird, but that's just how it works. So there's no direct correlation to like I inject 50 milligrams a week because I naturally normally produce 50 milligrams a week. You know, so if you hear a doctor talking about that or trying to start you on these low dosages in that range, again, that's another, I guess, red flag to some degree. The shutdown effect. So when you start TRT, so let's assume, because I'm going to start talking about now that we've already gone past the fact that you are going to be doing TRT. You're going to get on TRT. You've talked to like the docs I've had. You've run the blood panels, and it shows you're struggling and you need some help. And so when you're doing these blood panel stuff, this stuff is all prior to being on TRT, what I just referred to with Merrick Health and Anabolic Doc and doing those panels. Because once you get on TRT, the panels are going to change. And there's a reason for that, especially your FSH or LH, things like that are going to be in the red. They're going to dump. But so beforehand, before you decide, this is when you go down the road of properly doing all the blood work and talking to someone who legitimately knows what they're doing. And if your doctor doesn't showcase that you do these blood works first and foremost, again, that's a red flag that you need to get the fuck out of there and go talk to somebody else, because you don't want to be on TRT if you do not need to be on TRT. With that said, moving forward, you've already made the decision. You're going to be doing TRT. Here's how we start. When you start injecting, let's not focus on dosages yet. Let's just start on some generalities for when you start. Day one, nothing's going to fucking happen. It just isn't going to happen. Whether you have a gel or injection, It's going to take weeks until you feel an effect. Minimum 3-4 weeks, minimum. You might have like a placebo effect, like, oh, I start pumping iron the next few days, a fuckload more. Again, trust me, that's just a placebo. It's going to take 6 to 8 weeks to legitimately get you dialed in for the first phase, so to speak. And what's going to happen during this first phase, which I'm like calling basically the first year, and every man is different. In my case, it seemed like 6 to 8 months in, I started to shut down. So in other words, at first, your body's not going to stop producing natural testosterone. Even if you're producing a little bit like I was, so to speak, on a daily basis, I was still producing that little bit for 4, 5, 6 months into being on TRT. It wasn't until like month 8 range, 6 to 8 month range, was my blood work showing that I was pretty much shut down, naturally speaking. And so no matter what you do, once you start injecting, your body's going to start its path to naturally shutting down production. You can't get around that. All the fucking bodybuilders deal with it. Everyone on hormone optimization deal with it. Everyone on TRT deals with it. That's just, again, you need to be sure you're going to go on this to go on this. So keep that in mind. So this shutdown effect is going to happen somewhere in this time period. So what's going to happen is you're going to have this sort of spike where you're going to feel really good because you're going to, 3-4 weeks in, you're going to be flying pretty high on that test dosages. And then within a few months in, you might start to trickle down, you might trickle, etc. And you might start feeling shittier. You might start feeling even shittier as your natural production just starts to deteriorate and shut down while you're basically only relying on the exogenous introduction of the testosterone. And so every 6 to 8 weeks, especially in that first year, you want to be rechecking bloods and visiting with the doctor and checking in on both symptom mitigation and blood work or issue rise mitigation. So you can't just simply jump on and just fly straight. It isn't going to be that way. It took me like 2 years to dial this in. So there's no magic course to that. At the same time, you don't just want to start fluctuating all your fucking bullshit, the dosages that you get. You want to be very careful with what you change. And don't make changes inside of like a 6 to 8 week period. So if you want to change your dose up or down 5 or 10 milligrams a week, you do not do that in a 6 to 8 week period. You need some time for your body to acclimate to your dosage and schedule so that you can then assess, am I in the right direction or am I in the wrong direction? If you start injecting 100 one week, 200 the next week, 100 the next week, 150 the next week, or you're changing your frequency every other week, or your pattern of injections is off, your body's just going to be a fucking roller coaster of fucked upness. And you're never going to get it right. It's never going to balance out, and you're going to feel worse than you did before you were on TRT. Ask me how I know. Because I was getting bad advice for the better part of a year and change from 6-7 different doctors on this sort of like, oh, do this, do that, do this, change that. And it was fucking me up left and right. And so these are the things you want to do and understand walking into the equation, that you need to make small adjustments. Don't make any adjustments inside of 6 to 8 weeks. So give it a few months every time you make an adjustment, every time you start. You definitely, it's suggested to redo blood work after this every 2 months. Oh, but it's expensive, this or that. Yeah, well, feeling like shit and fucking up your life indefinitely is far more expensive than the opposite direction. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. My family survives on my ability to be 100% every day, come out, kick ass, and take names. It's very costly for me to not be 100%. So spending the money and the capital expenses to make sure that I'm in this direction of 100% is worth every fucking penny, every single day, all day long. It is the best money I have ever spent, and I will never regret the money that my wife and I have spent, so to speak, on this specific avenue of my health journey. And so moving forward to methods of administration. Now, there's definitely some cool stuff. Like in Virgil's book, he's got some great descriptions on the pluses and minuses of injecting, of the gels, and the pellets. And so if you really want to dive into that, you can pick up his book. Great read, too. It's not very long. It's like, let's see here. It's like 140 pages, but really in-depth in the different administration things. So the pellets are basically these little pellets that they inject into your fucking ass, more or less. And they sit in there for like 4 to 6 months and trickle out slowly, in theory. I'm not a big fan of that. I'll explain why later when I get to dosage frequency. Then the gel stuff, I was not a fan of gels. I didn't even bother trying it. I've heard horror stories with the gels with friends of mine. Both with just dosage is hard to dial in, and it's not very precise. It rubs off on shit. It can rub off on other people, on your kids. It's messy. It's not fun. So when I went on, I just went straight to fucking injection, straight up. And like I said, my wife helped me with injecting first because she had more experience with daily injectable bullshit than I did. And so I started off injecting, I think it was once a week initially, and I was at 40 milligrams a week. And so for some of you who know what a TRT type stuff, that's fucking low and way too low. So it's just enough to shut down all my natural production, but not enough to get me in any good range. So I just felt like dog shit. So that was one of the worst advices I got starting off, unfortunately. And so those are the primary things. It's going to be injection. So you got your needles with your fucking injectable. You got the creams and the pellets. And like I said, I prefer injections. Just go straight to the fucking gauntlet for multiple reasons. It's by far the most precise. It's by far the easiest to monitor. And once you get it down, I truly believe it's the easiest to deal with as far as administration. I inject every single day, every single morning, and I'll get to reasons why I do that too. But those are the 3 times. And so with that said, once you get going, like I said, every 6 to 8 weeks of the first year, every 2 months, it's not bad to do your blood work to see what's up. Some might say that's a little too much or too often. Again, that's fine too. You could go off of symptom mitigation for the first time period, and then like at month 4 or month 6 do blood work instead of every 2 months. And then when you do the blood draws, it's totally different when you're on TRT than when you're not on TRT, because you can't just go and get your fucking blood work done indiscriminately to when you inject, etc. The reason for that is injection and TRT administration causes peaks and valleys, and you want to not have that show up in a fashion that will be confusing for your blood work or your panel. And so here is the thing. So if you're doing injections like twice a week, for example, and a common protocol for twice a week testosterone injections is like Monday mornings, Thursday nights. So what you want to do is you want to get your blood collected kind of mid-range to like mid to high range on that. So when I was doing blood work while I was doing twice a week injections, my blood works would be Wednesday mornings, and you want to do it in a fasted state, but not a dehydrated state. That is very important for TRT people. Again, only found this out the hard fucking way, because if you show up dehydrated and fasted to do blood work in the morning, your hematocrit's going to be too high. It's going to cause an alarm. And I didn't really know that or understand any of this. And so obviously that kind of freaked out one of my doctors. So next time, after doing more research into how the blood work is done relative to dehydration and things like that, I learned drink like 40 ounces of water an hour or and change or 2 hours before your blood draw. So if it's at 8 a.m., do it at like 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Drink several glasses of water, again, in the fasted state, and do that. And like I said, I'm doing it Wednesday mornings if I'm injecting twice a week. So inject on Monday morning, do blood work Wednesday morning, and then inject again Thursday night. That was the injection schedule and blood work schedule for my twice a week injection TRT regimen. And that was giving me the most accurate blood work, so to speak, without the weird fuckery going on. And that's very important. If your doctor does not mention that to you or is very specific with your blood draws relative to your pen schedules and your dehydration issue, again, that could be a red flag for your doctor. You got to watch that shit. And it could show some scary stuff like the hematocrit spiking because of dehydration. It's really dumb, but that's just how the body reacts. And if you want, you can Google this type of stuff. You can start, again, there's a ton of medical literature in this type of stuff if you really want to go down the rabbit hole. And so for the blood draws while you're on testosterone, to be clear, here's the generalities that I found worked best while I was going through this. And by best, I mean they were the most consistent through the process. If you're injecting like once a week, let's say you inject Monday, it's best to shoot for like Thursday or Friday morning to do your blood draw. If you're injecting twice a week, like I was just saying, Monday mornings and Thursday nights, it's best to do your blood draw Wednesday mornings. And in my case, I am injecting every single day. So when I go to do my blood draws, I do my blood draw and then I, do it as early as I can. Like I get like the fucking 8 a.m. appointment at the LabCorp, and then I do my injection as soon as I get back. So instead of injecting at like 6 or 6:30 in the morning, that specific day, it gets pushed back to like 8:45 or 9 a.m. So then that way I've got a blood draw that's not like directly post-injection, so I can get the most realistic grasp as to where I am on that plateau. You don't want to inject too close to an injection on either side of the table. Either like if you inject once a week on Mondays, do not fucking try and do blood work on Mondays. Do not try and do blood work on Sundays or like Tuesdays or Wednesdays. You're too close to that injection. It's not going to be accurate. You need to do it kind of mid to later stream, like the 60% range to some degree, so that you can get a more accurate and consistent blood draw while you're on TRT. So now let's go into when they're doing the blood work, some ideal lab ranges and stuff that I try to look for and stick to myself to keep me not feeling like shit, So I focus primarily on free T more than I do total T and stuff like that. So total T's I float, I'll be in the range of 600, 700, 800 range, somewhere in there. Obviously it kind of moves around and things like that, but I'm always in that range to some degree. And I focus more on free T. So free T, I tend to sit in middle to high range. Sometimes a hair above the reference range is okay, although I feel just fine in like the middle to high ranges on the free T. And if that starts to go too low, again, you want to mitigate some issues with that. I constantly check the estrogen because I felt like dog shit once my estrogen started to spike. The aromatization factor was kicking me down pretty bad. And same with the SHBG spikes. That was deteriorating my free T. So when SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, starts to go up, it's going to start to pull that testosterone out, so to speak, of the equation when it comes to total. And now what happens is your free T starts to lower. The free T is what's going to give you the most symptom reduction. And this is what I have found. Now, there are friends of mine that ignore all this shit and they seem to do fine. There's friends of mine that did ignore this shit, felt like dog shit, started to get more dialed in, and it was like a light switch, just like for me, a night and day fucking difference. And so again, watching the SHBG, watching your estradiol, estrogen stuff, as well is very important. And I like to keep estrogen into the mid to high range max. Definitely want to keep it out of the high side of the reference range. And what's also very important is you want to keep it away from the bottom of the reference range and below the reference range. You do not want to crush your estrogen into the ground, which is like what some doctors do by putting dudes on fucking AIs when they don't need to be on AIs. And I'm going to elaborate more on that too. But yeah, so the other thing too is I monitor constantly my LDL and lipid panel. And this can also be kind of scary because typically speaking, your HDL might decrease some once you go on TRT, because sometimes it's a struggle to get better HDL sometimes. And there's some mitigation in that too. And then your LDL typically goes up. But you don't need to stress too much, because what you really want to focus on is the LDL being either pattern A or pattern B. And if your doctor is not appropriately explaining to you the LDL panels and relative to pattern A or pattern B in the oxidation factor of those LDL particles, then again, that's kind of a red flag too. Like your doctor doesn't understand the complexity behind this shit. So you can easily just look it up. How do I figure out pattern A or pattern B LDL? There's some great doctors in the game, so to speak, that focus on this as well. So you can find some YouTube videos on those calculations. But again, if you are not told that the LDL stuff has a much bigger impact on pattern A or pattern B relative to, oh my God, your LDL is higher, you need to go on fucking statins and shit like that. Like again, that's a red flag that like that's not a good thing. You need to understand the specifics in your lipid panel before you just start jumping on statins or this bullshit, because the whole LDL is high is bad is a total fucking myth. And I'm really happy that there are doctors. Oh yeah, right here. I just forgot about that. Bowden and Sinatra right here. This is a great fucking book. It is The Great Cholesterol Myth. And and some phenomenal stuff in here about exactly what I am referring to, pattern A versus pattern B, LDL, and why that is what you focus on, not, oh my God, the LDL is raising. Monitor CBC with platelets. So like the red blood cell count and things like that. So the hematocrit and things, it can rise on TRT. It's not uncommon. I've had friends where they have been put into a position where they go and donate blood every now and then. I have not had to do that yet, so to speak. I'm several years into this. But if I do, I can. So there's a mitigation tactic by donating blood to help some of these spikes and some of these other CBC metrics. They may not be great, but at the same time, I also watch for change in platelets, because if there's no change in the platelets, that is also a risk mitigation thing too. So you want to focus on that too. If you start seeing drastic increases in platelets or changes in the platelets relative to like what you're seeing for your normals, that can be a sign that you need to start deploying some mitigation tactics. The other thing too is the bloodletting. If you go too far into donating blood to try and compensate for some of these other characteristics, perceivably being too high, you could end up in an inverse direction of crashing fucking ferritin, and that could also make you feel like dog shit. So everything is in some sort of balance, and everyone is different. And so like I'm saying, for me, I have so far have not had to go down that road of having to do blood donations to help mitigate some of the rises. And part of that has to do with my specific protocol, and that could help you. It could not help you. Like I'm saying, I have friends that they never have issues. I have other friends that they're really struggling with the rise in certain aspects of the CBC, and they're doing, donating blood pretty routinely to help mitigate that, and still struggling because they unfortunately do crash the ferritin on accident in some situations when you start to overdo the donations of blood. So while you're on TRT, like I had said, there's a lot, unfortunately, and in my position too, like there's negative side effects that can rear their ugly head that these doctors unfortunately either ignore, don't understand, or don't know how to resolve. And typically in men, at least the guys I've talked to, the guys I've listened to, and things like that, they present themselves in gastrointestinal issues, heartburn, anxiety, insomnia, things along those lines. And so if you start to have like too much estrogen, so to speak, or aromatization of estrogen gets too high, you can end up with an increase of heartburn. So one of the signs that you're starting to over-aromatize estrogen is an unusual increase in heartburn all of a sudden. So I was getting like this weird fucking wall of heartburn out of like almost nowhere. And I was doing research on that, like what is the correlation to that? And I found some great medical literature on studies revolving around estrogen increases and the reduction, or actually as the estrogen increases, the pressure, so to speak, of your lower esophageal sphincter decreases, which increases transient lower esophageal sphincter relaxations, equating to, this is a fancy way of saying heartburn, i.e. the valve at the top of your stomach becomes a little bit more relaxed and starts to let more acid and stuff up through to give you more of that acid reflux and heartburn as your estrogen increases. And now there are guys on TRT that this happens to, etc. What's fucking crazy is I got kicked out of a Facebook group because I was like asking about this, like who else is experiencing this? And a few other guys were like, oh yeah. And I was told it has nothing to do with it. You just go on fucking PPIs. Again, worst fucking thing you could do. Stay the fuck off PPIs. Holy fuck. And so I was doing all this research into, this doesn't make sense. There's no fucking way these other weird shit is popping up when I started having TRT dosages increase or being on TRT. Long story short, I got my estrogen under control, fucking heartburn, acid reflux instantly disappeared. It was like fucking gone. So for me, anecdotally, the estrogen mitigation was like a direct correlation to gastrointestinal issues, like directly. And that could also present itself. Like I had a buddy who, it's more like IBS related symptoms, and all of that disappeared once he got his cycle and protocol dialed in, because the gastrointestinal tract is heavily monitored or, controlled by hormones like testosterone, like estrogen, and stuff like that. And so even though men are not estrogen dominant and we don't have as much estrogen as women, we still need estrogen. So if you crash your estrogen too with AIs, the negative effects on that, like in cardiac negative effects, present their ugly head as well. So you can do, again, do some Googling on that too and look up those effects of crashing estrogen and cardiac issues as well as other issues that come into play. Hence why, like, I'm not a fan of AIs. I say stay the fuck off AIs if you're on TRT. AIs are just, they have their time and place for guys that are heavily cycling anabolics. So yeah, the anxiety too. If you are on too high of a dose, it can start to kick you into insomnia and anxiety. And so that was happening for me in a fashion, and it wasn't the overall dose per week. What was happening to me was my dosage frequency was off, i.e., I wasn't injecting enough. So I was getting too much of these lows and highs, and it was creating serious anxiety and insomnia on some days of the week, and then the complete inverse on other days of the week. And so these are some negative signs I experienced that I easily mitigated by getting my protocol in order. So if you're experiencing gastro issues, heartburn, anxiety, insomnia with, while you're on your TRT, these are tall tale signs that you need to start figuring out and mitigating things like SHBG, things like estrogen especially, to get this stuff back under control. And like I was saying, I like to have my estrogen in like that mid to high reference range, at most on the high side. Middle of the reference range seemed to do just fine for me. Like I just chill right there right now. And it's like, it's doing just fine. And this leads me to the mountain and valley effect of testosterone. So when you're injecting these bad boys and with the test, and just to be clear, there's the injectables have two forms, long and short esters. I use a long ester. It's a testosterone cypionate, and this specific one here is, let me just check just to make sure I don't get this wrong, 2,000 milligrams per 10 milliliters. So you can get those in 1,000 milligrams per 10 milliliters or 2,000 milligrams per 10 milliliters, depending on how much volume you feel like injecting. So the mountain and valley effect. Let's say my doctor puts me on 200 milligrams a week. That is fucking high for TRT. Holy fuck. But let's say 200 milligrams a week. So I'm injecting 200 milligrams. Let's say he puts me on once a week injection. So that means every Monday morning I am pinning 200 milligrams. So Monday night into Tuesday night, I'm going to pretty much peak and be fucking riding high into like Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon. Going to be still riding till about Friday, Saturday. You're kind of cruising and doing good. By like Saturday night, Sunday, you're just fucking dog shit. Maybe even by Friday night to Saturday, Sunday, you're just like complete dog shit. And so some men can handle this, like injecting once a week or injecting every 2 weeks, etc. Almost every friend of mine I've talked to, and a lot of guys I've talked to as well and referenced here, they steer away from that. They inject far more frequently because this mountain and valley effect is so detrimental to men, and it fucking crushed me. It would cause this massive anxiety, insomnia, and it would just crush me on the backside. And there's, again, some dudes seem to do fine with this. I just haven't met any or know any that I talk to. But the most of the time, the thing is, you're naturally producing testosterone every day. Your balls are waking up and fucking shoving that shit into your body at like 8 a.m. Let's say you're not like a night shift dude. Like you work a normal 9-to-5 job, normal. Even though I'm an entrepreneur, so I don't have fucking normal. And I have a newborn and a fucking toddler, so schedule is kind of fucked. But regardless, the point being is, every day at 6 or 7 a.m., your balls shove a bunch of fucking testosterone into the system, whatever. And then, obviously, later on in the day, it crashes, and you're not doing as much. And it happens again on the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And so it's not like it's just a constant fucking shoving of testosterone in, so it doesn't matter. There's no peaks or valleys. No, even naturally speaking, you have a peak and valley. That's just normal. And so what I'm getting at is that is a peak and valley every single day, as opposed to a peak and valley beginning of the week, midweek, end of week, or beginning of the week, midweek, starting at the next week. If you do twice a week, now you're creating 2 valleys a week. So where I'm going with this is I kept going down this road of symptom mitigation, and every time I was increasing the frequency I inject. In other words, I went from twice a week to every other day to then every day. I had significant improvements over this, like a 6-month time period that I transitioned in symptom reduction and mitigation of the blood work stuff not looking good, i.e. my estrogen went back to normal. My SHBG kind of floated good, but that has to do more with diet, and I'll get to that in a minute. And my symptom mitigation, like I was saying, was like a light switch, because now I've like figured this out. I have it dialed in. And so I went from injecting with these highs and lows that cause this weekly fucking roller coaster to now I inject every single morning as soon as I wake up. And that every day I have this mini roller coaster, and I do a long form ester to help flatten that out even more, so that now it is like a fucking smooth cruise. It is just fucking dialed. Just so dialed. It's, again, so that injection frequency decreases this mountain and valley effect, which I have found, talking with other dudes, doing more research, is like the number one best thing you can fucking do, especially with any issue mitigation. So I am on, right now, I do 18 milligrams every single morning. So I may go up to 20, I may go up to 140 a week, but right now I'm only at 18. So in other words, every single day I'm at 18 milligrams. So to do 140 a week, I would be at 20 milligrams. And I say roughly 18 because when you inject with a syringe, and I'll dive into this in a second, it's not quite precise. But the point being is every morning as soon as I get up, I inject 18 milligrams. This has done wonders for every single aspect of TRT, from muscle building to elimination of the heartburn and those other gastro issues, to the insomnia issue, to the anxiety issue. It's like a fucking light switch, and it makes total sense when you understand how your body and circadian rhythm work to your natural testosterone production. And when you start exogenously just shoving fuckloads of milligrams in way above your natural or normal production, it creates these mountains and valleys that just fuck men up, dude. It just fucks them up. And so now let's dive into, like I had to experience, aromatization is a problem. And what that means is you're injecting all this extra testosterone, so to speak, and your body uses that testosterone to make estrogen as a man. All men do this. So it's not like I'm special or whatever. So there's ways you can mitigate having too much testosterone converted into estrogen through aromatization. You can take medication, AIs, anastrozole, which again, I really dislike because it crushes your fucking estrogen in the ground. And that is, at least in my opinion, in my experience, far more detrimental and made you feel way more like shit, not having enough estrogen. Because you want estrogen in the mid-range, like I've said multiple times. So this aromatization happens for a few different reasons. One, when you do these large dosages, you're going to have some excess that gets converted, so you might actually end up converting way too much estrogen. Like I was starting to shoot way above the reference range with these bolus doses, so to speak. The other thing, too, is body fat. Visceral fat will over-aromatize estrogen more. So, like, the more visceral fat you have a higher probability of estrogen aromatization than if you are a skinnier or leaner guy, so to speak. So, if you're on TRT, get your fucking ass in shape. Like, start losing that visceral fat, because you're only making it worse for yourself by putting your body in a position that wants to aromatize even more into fucking estrogen. Dosage size and frequency. So again, like I'm saying, for me, I found that once I went to daily injections, my fucking estrogen went from way above, like double reference range. It shot way back down to mid-range. And that was over the course of like 6 to 8 months when I transitioned from injecting twice a week to every other day, and then finally to every day. And that was a slow transition over like 6-month range. So not just doing it overnight. It was a transition. And my estrogen went back to the mid-range. All those other bullshit went away. And again, I am not on any AI. I never took an AI. I tell all my friends, stay the fuck away from that, because it's easily to mitigate these side effects by doing what I am talking about. Like the dosaging frequency is a huge and very phenomenal mitigation tactic. I'm not the only one that talks about this. The guys I referenced earlier and some of the book stuff, etc., and a lot of other materials online talk about this too. A ton of anecdotal evidence too, and other people that have filmed stuff like this that talk about dosage frequency and mitigation of these issues. And so on top of that, to help that too, and during that process, when I was experiencing this too much estrogen bullshit, I also supplemented with a few other things, like some natural bits too, like DIM, calcium deglutamate, and grapeseed extract. And I only did that for a few months while I was bringing that estrogen down, while I was converting over to everyday dosaging. And so now I'm down to only taking, like on the peak, I was doing 300 milligrams of DIM a day. I don't remember, I think 500 or 1,000 on calcium deglutamate, which you need to be careful with that if you got kidney stones. That's not a good one to do, so avoid that if that's part of the issue. The DIM is basically just a molecule that's found in cruciferous vegetables, and you'd have to eat like fucking pounds of it to get enough, so to speak. And I started out at 300 milligrams a day, which I know is pretty fucking high. If you know what you're talking about, you might think like, Jason, that's a little too much. And worked my way back down to like 150 to 100 milligrams a day. And now I kind of take like 150 milligrams every other day, and probably just go back down to like 50 milligrams a day of DIM, D-I-M. And you can find that on Amazon and things like that. It's pretty easy to find. And so that's another thing that can help you decrease that estrogen number naturally without using pharmaceuticals like AIs. But the number one thing I found is just the dosage frequency and the dosing amount. Notice I said I'm at 18 milligrams a day, and I might go to 20 milligrams a day. That's 140 milligrams a week on the high side. And I'm doing fucking great, dude. My numbers are mid to high reference range. My free T is in the mid to highs, just floating in that good spot. My estrogen is in the mid-range. I got no issues with that. And I've got friends that they're fucking putting them on like 200 milligrams of test a week and then throwing them on AIs and telling them to inject once every 2 weeks. And they just feel like dog shit. And it's like, you don't need 200 milligrams. Like, that's a borderline low fucking steroid dose. I know friends that are doing great at 90 milligrams a week. So, again, you don't have to just abide by these sort of cookie cutter protocols, because everyone is different and you want to take your time to dial this in. Like I'm saying, I'm 2+ years into it and I'm doing really fucking good compared to when I started, and I'm only at 18 milligrams a day. So you don't need to abuse any of this shit to get you where you want to be, so to speak. The other thing too is I had a buddy, and I never saw this or knew this was a thing, and I have seen some guys talk about it too, is they're fucking having his doctor compounded his injection with a fucking AI at a compounding pharmacy. And I was like, what the fuck? And he could not figure out why he was feeling like shit in this. And long story short, he worked his way back off this and into more of the protocol like I'm referring to, with a lower dosage amount overall, dosage frequency highly increased. I think he's at every other day. But yeah, you want to avoid the fucking aromatase inhibitors in the fucking testosterone dosages from like a compounding pharmacy. That is again another red flag. I don't know why the doctors do that shit. So again, injection frequency and SHBG. Now SHBG is the sex hormone binding globulin. As that bad boy starts to increase, he will decrease your free T. So if you let that skyrocket, or you naturally have one super high, like you are on a strict lion diet, so to speak, which is a variant of a carnivore diet, and I will get into more of that shortly, because I fucked myself with that too. Again, you got to learn things the hard way, man. It's not as simple as ivory tower theory. Now, again, I love reading medical literature, and I have read a lot on these hormones and the books and everything, but I have also experimented on myself over the course of years to figure out what works really fucking good for me. And so part of this is the SHBG has an inverse relationship with injection frequency. So if you have too high of SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, if you start injecting every single day, that tends to lead to increasing SHBG. When you detract from that and you go back to like injecting every other day or injecting twice a week, so you're injecting larger amounts of testosterone at a time, that tends to push your SHBG back down. So again, this is where it kind of sucks. To mitigate estrogen, you can go to everyday dosaging, but that could put your SHBG too high, and then that might start pushing your free T too low. So maybe your everyday dose has to increase. Like I said, every man is different. And so you could fluctuate that. So you're mitigating the estrogen side effect. You might actually hit yourself a little high on SHBG because you're increasing the frequency of dosages. So you might have to watch that through diet, and you might have to watch that through sleep too. Always make sure you're getting the sleep too. I can't stress that enough. That is one of the most important things. But you could increase the amount that you're taking each day as well to kind of get you over that hump, so to speak, to get you over the hill of the SHBG raising to get your free T a little higher. So that's, again, another trick. And like I'm saying, I'm right now on the fence of only increasing 2 milligrams a day. So tiny amounts. And I'm still on the fence. I'm going to wait till another like 4 or 5 weeks of my next blood draw and see how I feel as to whether or not I even make that change. Just to give you some sort of transparency into how little has changed and how you wait to change these little bits to dial stuff in. Now, so that's injection frequency. And like I said, every day is fucking great. That has mitigated all of my fucking issues. Now, when it comes to injecting, I was scared about this. Like I said, my wife walked me through this. Bless her fucking heart. She had a time period in her life where she had to do daily injections to get through some unpleasantries, and she fucking manned up and did it. And so she, was like, nah, this is no big deal. We fucking got this. And so she started me on the injections and got me going and got me over the fear of like having to fucking do this needle every day. And am I going to infect myself and cut myself and blah, blah, blah. What about aspirating this on? So long story short, like you don't really need to aspirate these. Again, I was really scared about that at first. These days, not so much. And the reason being is I basically, let me explain what I do. And not everyone does this, but I go for the vent glute. Is basically this section that is right above your bum. It's like this area right here, so to speak. So you have one on your left, and one on your right. And so with that said, that's where I inject. I avoid like the biceps. I avoid the shoulders, the legs, the other bullshit. From my research, from talking with people, none of those are good areas. They tend to cause more problems than anything else. And what you also want to do is you don't want to change the generalized area where you inject. So you don't want to inject in your bicep one day, and then the next one you inject your quad, and the next one you do your vent glute, et cetera, or you do your fucking stomach, which is a bad fucking idea. Sub-Q in the stomach with testosterone is a bad idea. You want to inject in the vent glute. You want to inject like I do every single day or every other day, and you do it changing side to side. So left side one day, right side the other day. And the reason you don't want to deviate from that is consistency. If you haven't noticed, there's a pattern I've somewhat hinted at, is that with this process, consistency is key. That's why you don't change your injection dosage or frequency very often. You got to do it over the course of like 6 to 8 weeks or months at a time, so to speak. And in doing so, you're going to decrease like this sort of weird fuckery that you get because the body takes time to acclimate. So when you start injecting different spots and alternating, even though you may be putting the same amount in your needle, so to speak, like for me, I'm at 9 clicks on this every day. And that 9 clicks, if I put that in my bicep and then my quad and then my ass the next day, all 3 of those days are going to end up with different amounts in my body, so to speak. Not physically, but what's actually being used. Because your body, the effect of the testosterone in your body changes from where you inject it. And there's some people that say that that's not possible, but I have experienced that being very fickle. So maybe some guys can get away with doing it all over without an effect, or maybe they're injecting so much it doesn't matter because they're already fucking pegged. But on a TRT protocol, it's about consistency. So like I say, I go vent glute, switch left to right hand side every single day. I rarely ever get fucking blood. I use I use a 27 or a 29. I currently have a stack of 27s, but I also have a stack of 29s. These are half inch or 5/8 long needles, somewhere in that range, 27. And like I said, I'm only 9 clicks on this bad boy. You have to do your own math. Your doctor can help you with that because you want to focus on milligrams, not milliliters or clicks. So for me, that 9 clicks on this bad boy is 18 milligrams a day. And so with that said, you definitely don't want to go larger than a 27 needle. Otherwise, you're going to get into like a fucking harpoon situation, and that shit's going to hurt. Now on the 29 needles, they're smaller, and they definitely hurt less than a 27, but I find that getting the cypionate into this guy is a little more time consuming on a 29 for obvious reasons. When you pull back on the plunger, it takes a little longer to fill. That's about it. But both the 27 and 29 work great for me, so I interchange them. I use the 29s I still cycle a lot of peptides too. That's a whole nother conversation for manipulation of stuff if you get into injectable peptides. So I use the 29s for those, so that's why I also use them for my testosterone as well. And here's another important thing. This section, now we're moving on to diet issues and mitigation with the diet bullshit. So if you're going on TRT and you have not dialed your diet in, i.e., cut the fuck out of sugar, cut the fuck out of alcohol, cut the fuck out of the weed, yeah, the devil's lettuce is going to fuck your balls up, bro. It's going to completely destroy your test numbers. So you got to get off that devil's lettuce for a little bit of time, or at least significantly decrease your consumption, and then do your bloods. Decrease your consumption of alcohol, then do your blood work. Cut out sugar. Holy fuck. And seed oils. All of this stuff is bad for testosterone production. Very bad. You want to make sure you get enough sunlight, get enough vitamin D. I know it sounds trivial, but these are important things. If you can't, you're stuck working indoors. Start supplementing with vitamin D. Make it a point to get some fucking sunlight every morning. I live in Southern California. I work for myself. I often find myself outside with my shirt off like a fucking weirdo more often than not. So I typically get plenty. I'm not stressed on that. The other thing too is I found myself, here's a good side note too. Insulin resistance. If you are insulin resistant and you haven't tried to mitigate or correct that before jumping on TRT, you need to do so first and give that like a solid 6 months. Dr. Benjamin Bickman wrote a phenomenal book, Why We Get Sick, that really dives into insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity. And holy fuck, that will be a big help too if you're on that fence of whether or not to take TRT and you're doing some natural mitigation. Now, with that said, if you're on TRT, these things are equally as important. So I've done a bunch of fucking research in this side of the table as well because I was scared to death about going on TRT. For years, I avoided it. And one of the things was, what happens? Like, am I going to get fucked up like some of these friends that I have that have been into bodybuilding and abused anabolics and things like that, and they have some serious issues, and we're not even like, well, no, some of them are in their 40s. None of them are like 50 yet, right? And like, it's not great. Like, it's kind of fucking scary to some degree. And so I was like concerned that like all this stuff could totally be fucked up and this and that. And the best way it was described to me, and I'm trying to remember who it was, and it might have been Anabolic Doc Thomas or Derek. I don't remember which one had kind of phrased it this way, is that when you're on TRT, you have to keep in mind the negative side effects of diet are going to be increased. So the negative side effects of alcohol in diet, the negative side effects of shitty sugar, seed oils, things like that in your diet are going to be increased. So now is a better time than ever if you jump on TRT to get your fucking shit in line. Cut out the sugar, cut out the seed oils, focus on insulin resistance, get your fucking shit together. Cut down on the alcohol. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a prude and you can't fucking smoke the devil's lettuce from time to time and have a goddamn horribly fucking tasting IPA. No, what I'm saying is you have to keep in mind that if you're still fucking downing 16 beers a night and taking bong rips till 3 o'clock in the morning and you're fucking worried about your tests, so you jump on TRT, you're just going down a worse fucking road if you do really need TRT in that situation and you still can't stop the devil's lettuce or alcohol, you need to significantly reduce that stuff. You need to significantly cut out the sugar. You need to start, another thing is you need to start being fucking, like, you need to get moving. You cannot be sedentary on TRT, because if you're going down this road, it's like a good, like, wake up session to start getting all these other aspects of your life and health in order and really kind of optimize all of it at the same time. Diet, lifestyle, and hormones, all in the same sort of bunch. So use your avenue or your new venture into TRT to optimize all these other things at the same time. And like I'm saying, there's a ton of information on that stuff too. Now, when it comes to, like, I fucked myself up on an issue with the carnivore diet, or what would be considered the lion diet, because there's a big misconception online, and a lot of people get this wrong too, but like the carnivore diet-esque guys, and like Sean Baker kind of does this, or because it's like there's some cross between this, although Paul Saladino I think would be more of the carnivore-esque guru to some degree. So lion diet is a variant of carnivore diet where you're basically only eating red meat and stuff like that. So steaks, ground beef, things like that. So Dr. Jordan Peterson, Michaela Peterson, they are big fans of the lion diet, and they used it for mitigation of serious other health issues. This is irrelevant of TRT, but I'll get to why there's a tie-in. The carnivore diet, on the other hand, like Paul Saladino, etc., he's still pumping in 100, 80, 100 to 150 of carbs a day, and he's using in-season fruit to do so. And so the carnivore diet actually is pretty much all meat other than some carbohydrates, etc., from in-season fruit. And you avoid everything else. And now there's like the Sean Baker version of the carnivore diet, which he has kind of like the pseudo-lion diet carnivore diet, where he's primarily red meat, but he has other bits. And Paul Saladino, like I'm saying, he'll incorporate some carbohydrates with fruit, and he'll have a ton of organ meats and other stuff incorporated in that too. And so I was pretty heavy onto carnivore diet for a while. The problem with this, and the problem with zero or low carb diets, is that for men on the testosterone replacement, or men in general, it's a misconception that carnivore diet is going to help you make more testosterone. It actually fucks you up. And the reason it does is the lack of carbohydrates spikes your SHBG. So what that will start to do, like I've said before, is that will pull down your free T number. So although you might have some higher T levels, your free T, or the T that actually matters to where you don't feel like shit, starts to decrease. So your numbers may be floating high, but that high SHBG that's climbing because of the carnivore diet or low carb or zero carb diet starts to kick down your free T, and then boom. And next thing you know, you're not going to be feeling as good. And so I ran into that side of the table as well. Again, you have to learn from your mistakes. So now, ever since I started incorporating back in some more sweet potatoes, and that's my carb of choice, is the sweet potatoes and maybe some fruit here or there, an apple or something like that. But my SHBG came back down to normal ranges. It opened back up my free into a better number. I started feeling way better, etc. So again, diet plays a huge factor into this. You can't just jump on TRT and then think that like I can just eat like shit and whatever, and I'm going to start lifting weights more and I'll be fine. No, you're going to fuck yourself up. You need to do check the plaque scores for the cardiovascular stuff. And like the doctors I was talking about earlier, like they will fucking go, like fucking anabolic doc, he was great with this. He really focuses on the cardiovascular issues with the older men on TRT, not necessarily guys in my age group, but the older men, and mitigation and tactics deployed to make sure you're not going to end up in a bad cardiac situation. Because some guys will go on TRT and then just continue to eat like shit. Fucking pizza and beer and just whatever the fuck they want. And they think because they look a little bit more ripped, so to speak, that they're healthy, when the reality is they're just garbage insides. Like they're trashing their fucking liver, trashing their kidneys, trashing their cardiovascular system, fucking mega plaque buildup in the arteries. And it's like 45 years old and they're getting hit like a brick fucking wall with these problems, when all of this could easily be mitigated or fucking reversed by fixing stuff like what Ben Bickman's protocol is, insulin resistance, fixing your diet, and cleaning this stuff up. The other thing too is like the being sedentary. Once you start on TRT, like the last thing you want to do is be fucking sedentary. You got to start fucking moving, and you got to do, and like I'm saying, I have found, this daily routine of injecting as soon as I wake up, and then I hit weights about an hour to an hour and a half after I inject. I have a morning routine where I get some work done. I do emails. I start doing some design work here. Bits are there. I do CAD work design. If you look at other videos on my channel, you'll see my engineering firm and things like that. And so I also get my shit together for my wife. Every morning when she wakes up, she has her coffee ready. She has her electrolytes ready. Oh, electrolytes. That's another thing. Very fucking important. You need to make sure you're getting the proper electrolytes, not just sodium, but primarily potassium. So many people forget that potassium is a huge fucking factor, and you need to have a good relationship of that and magnesium with your sodium. Salt is not fucking scary, not at all. So again, once you start going down the road of understanding the insulin resistance, understanding the diet manipulation, getting rid of all the garbage food in these fucking stores, and making your own stuff, you're going to start feeling a lot better. But like I'm saying, in my routine, I inject. I have an hour and change of work and stuff for my wife, her coffee, her electrolytes. I start food for the toddler so that he's fucking ready to shred as soon as he wakes up because he's a grumpy motherfucker. And then whatever other bits I need to get ready for the wife to come downstairs with the newborn, etc. And that's part of what I do. And then I do weights. And I find that is phenomenal, both for just the daily mindset, daily physical set, everything. And I'm getting back to training more and more, building more and more muscle mass, going to be back to doing Ironmans real soon here. I did struggle with a lot of issues through 2020 and 2021 health issues, unfortunately, that kept me from competing, as well as the fucking flu. But the point being is, if you're going on TRT and you're just thinking this is going to be fine, and then you continue this sedentary beta male bullshit lifestyle, like, that's not going to fly. You got to do something. You got to start walking a fuck more. Start picking up some weights. It doesn't matter if it's 5-10 pounds. Just start moving and getting things going. All of this is going to yield to much better positive results, on top of the fact that it's also a huge benefit for mitigation of side effects from being on TRT is not being sedentary. Get fucking moving. And so with that, let's review my protocol. And before that, like HCG and things like that, I never went on HCG. There are guys that do like it, some doctors that do like it. I see a need or a reason why some men do want to do it and go on it. I never saw a need for it. I actually fathered a kid while I was on TRT, so I wasn't completely shut down at that point. In theory, you will be shut down to where, like, you're not going to be fathering kids, but just be safe, because like that doesn't mean that it's a fail safe. Like, just because you're injecting doesn't mean you're not going to knock your wife up or girlfriend up or whatever, because you could still producing enough swimmers to where like you could totally get a chick pregnant. And so you got to be careful. Although there's a high probability it will shut you down eventually, that it may not do that to everyone. It did do that to me for the most part. But you got to watch for that. So it's not just a normal, or there's a misconception that once you start injecting, you don't have to worry about birth control. That's unfortunately not the case. So don't just pretend or let a doctor tell you that is the case. And so HCG can be used for men that try to maintain that or try to have kids or things like that while on TRT. I never even bothered with it. My wife and I are done having kids. I had talked to her about this multiple times. She has 2. She does not want 3. And so we're sticking to that. So again, not even something I even entertain or deal with. So here's my protocol, like I had kind of gone through. Testcypionate, 18 milligrams a day. I inject every single morning. That's 9 on this guy. This is a 27. I do have 29s as well. I inject into the vent glute, top side of the ass. I go left side, right side, depending on the day. I switch back and forth. And I do still run a DIM supplement, usually at lunchtime, about 100 milligrams, 150 milligrams every other day. And that is a supplement you can buy off Amazon. And eventually I may not need it. Let's see how my next blood work comes. If my next blood work comes in and my estrogen is either a little bit on the low side or mid, I'm not even going to bother with the DIM anymore. Injection frequency, like I said, is very important. I inject every single morning. It is by far the best fucking thing I have found with TRT. And all my friends that have gone to higher injection frequencies, holy fuck, is it like turning a light switch on and mitigating all of the negative side effects. And the other big thing is the scar tissue bullshit. And so let me show you something for that. Okay, so my chiropractor, who's an IFBB pro, ironically enough, Dr. Peter Chonsky. So he got us one of these. This is a rapid release. This guy right here is great at working out the scar tissue from the injection site. And now I've got the injections down to where I barely have any scar tissue, but for a while you can start to feel that little bit of buildup here or there. So just hit it with a rapid release or something like that once or twice a day, and that makes a massive fucking difference once that scar tissue starts to build up. So every now and then I can feel it, or if I start injecting too fast, I'm not paying attention and a little rough with it, I might get some scar tissue sometimes. But for the most part, dude, I still inject every single day, and I have zero scar tissue issues. And so that is this episode of JEHC on TRT, hormone optimization. My protocol, what I like to do, why I like to do it, some people to talk to, some people you should definitely look at and doing blood work from and things like that. Like the Marek Health is rad. Derek's thing, MAREK Health, because even with my protocol, what I do nowadays is like my endocrinologist doesn't like doing the estrogen stuff. So I will order those blood works directly through Marek Health. And you can go on there and do it pretty easily. So it's something that, well, the computer's being a dick right now. So let me just show you real quick what I like to do. Marek Health Labs. So this is one thing that they have, which is a supplementation to like my normal doctor bullshit, services, blood work, and labs. So I showed you the blood work earlier on this. So the backside of my protocol is I monitor bloods right now every few months, 3-4 months range. And you can do these packages, and that's all great. But here's what I fucking like. And Marek Health has this to where I can go in and just order individuals. Like, here's the lipid panel is $8. Estradiol, $8. CBC with differential and platelets, $8.50. Complete so you can just start adding these to cart. You know, SHBG, $36. So they have fucking page after page of, you can just straight order these. You don't need your doctor to do anything. And then ferritin, $8. Insulin, $11. Cortisol, estradiol sensitive, $50. Basic thyroid panel, T3 uptake, free thyroxine. So you can go in and do this straight up for like, I think that for me, the ones I run end up being like $150 every like 4 months. And it's the blood work that like my endocrinologist doesn't normally run. So like the SHBG, the estradiol, I might do like reverse T3, I might do some more lipid stuff, things like that. And then I just go down to the LabCorp that's down the street. And basically from there, I can wait 4 or 5 days, I think it is. And then you get the blood work back and you pay them. It's fucking cake. So for a few $100, you can run your own blood work. You don't have to go through the doctor bullshit. You can pick and choose exactly what you want straight off Marek Health. And again, this is Derek from More Plates, More Dates. He's one of the co-founders. Testosterone, testosterone standard. So like all this progesterone, magnesium. I mean, there's just so much cool stuff that you can do all on your own. So you don't necessarily need to follow or beg your doctor. If they fight you too much, like just go do it yourself, you know? And so that's the backside of my protocol. And like I said, dude, I've got this shit dialed, man. This is one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life health-wise. And it is really making a difference once you get it dialed in. And I really hope that if you are struggling with TRT or trying to figure out your path through this fuckery, that this video helps you out and that there's some information in this that could guide you in a direction to getting to a fucking good day. Because trust me, there's a lot that can be wrong in your protocol that you may not know about or understand that can easily be resolved by mitigation of dosage frequency, mitigation of the dose itself, some of these lifestyle factors. Man, it's fucking rad. So my name is Jason Elvis Hurd. This has been another episode of JEHC. And as always, I appreciate your time. Hopefully this was rad. And again, thank you guys. Pitter patter.